Today, you are in for a special treat. We have Linda Traylor, our VP of Medical Affairs, coming to you with a program that she just finished delivering at the Medical Affairs Professional Society meeting in New Orleans, standing remotely. It was awesome. And we had so many people reaching out asking for an encore performance. And so we put it out there and look, here you are. We're really excited to have you. Tell you, if you want better insights, you got to focus on better coaching. And so today we're going to walk through the standing ovation type of presentation that we had at MAPS from Linda. And along the way, we're going to use our chat. If you have any questions or if Linda's asking you questions, put your answers in the chat. We want to make sure we answer any questions that you have along the way. And so with that, Linda, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So yeah, we just completed this webinar, this workshop at MAPS, and we did it in MAPS Americas, and we did it in MAPS EMEA, the EU, which was in London this year. And so my co-faculty were Marsha Walkup and Melissa Santiago. So shout out to them. And then the presenters, the faculty for the workshop at MAPS EMEA was Christine Vopel, a longtime friend and colleague and superstar medical affairs professional, and my colleague Jess. So it was both sessions had a really positive review. So we decided to make it into a webinar. So we don't have, this was originally designed as a 90-minute workshop. We're going to take you through in an hour webinar. So it's going to have a different flow to it. And we're going to move a little bit quicker, but we definitely want to take the time to get your questions and to kind of give you a sense of how the session went. Because we know insights are, we all use these words, lovely words, currency, it's the fuel for our medical strategy. All of it is true. Insights is what we really need to focus on and need to do well. That really does land with the medical affairs professional. Let's hear from what your functions are. Not only where you're from, what role do you have in your organization? Because we often say at Acceleration Point that Insights is a team sport. So I anticipate we are going to have across the board medical excellence, MSL director, field leader, field training, national director, MSLs. Excellent. Very good. Yes. So Insights, we have a whole webinar on it. Insights is a team sport. Everybody plays a role in contributing to or overseeing or directing the types of insights that we collect and use that should impact strategy. We are getting better as we go, especially with all the technology that's coming on board to help us through mastering the art of insights. I guess let me stop and say Linda Traylor. As Scott said, I head up the medical affairs team at Acceleration Point, but I've been in industry for over 25 years in many medical affairs roles, starting out in clinical and regulatory. But I moved over to an MSL early days and had a fairly traditional trajectory from there, MSL manager and executive. And I moved over to consulting a few years ago, joining Acceleration Point. I've known Scott for over a decade and the other founder, David. So thank you for sharing digital. Oh, good. We have some digital people on because I think all of it plays a role in insight. So let's jump into what we're going to talk about today. And starting off with the challenges we face with insights are not gone. We're still around. We are still sort of talking about the fact that it needs to be quality, not quantity, when in reality, we know it's both. It's not either or, it's both and. And the submitting the insights into a black hole. We've got so many fun toys and tools at our disposal now, but it's still that closing that loop of insights feedback still seems to be a challenge. It takes a long time to write it out. We're still kind of struggling with how to put it into the system in a way that is easy to extract, easy for AI tools to use, and reviewing the insights and building reports. It's the type of work we're doing now instead of reading manually through these spreadsheets, which, by the way, some companies still have. They're in these platforms. They're still putting a lot of effort and time into building these reports that they want. And it seems to be a lot of manual labor, even in that scenario. So we're not quite there yet. And the crux of it is still communicating why we're asking these questions. So if you are still facing any of those challenges, shout out to what is your biggest challenge or anything else that is propped up. Every time I talk to a new client, even if they're so far ahead with regards to tools and technology, they still face a lot of these challenges. So what challenges are you facing? Too many listening. Oh, okay. So now we're kind of moving in the like not being able to prioritize because we have too much stuff, too many things coming out of the medical plans and medical strategy. And that is paralyzing to just about every function in medical affairs. So that is a good one. Collecting the right data, the focused way, absolutely. So it sounds like we're still sort of struggling with the typical, but even with structure, we're still overwhelming our teams. So coaching plays a big role in that, right? Coaching is going to help you, help your teams really get better at insights. And that's really what we're going to be focusing on today. So we're going to talk about how we spot the gaps with the traditional coaching approaches for insights generation. And the biggest gap is often not making a plan for coaching. We'll talk about that. We're going to show a case study, a real case study on what an insights process could look like and how you might assess it and develop a coaching plan. And then we're going to give you a practical tool you can use as a means of integrating into your team dynamics and team meetings. And then we're going to end with a fun discussion around how you can use AI to improve your coaching for insights activities. So let's just start off with some of the myths about coaching. Um, you know, one of the things that we talked a lot about during these workshops was, especially with my co-faculty, is that a lot of times people think that the coaching sits within the manager's role only, the manager-employee role. And in reality, it's more about personal development. They're looking at it as more as a ethereal thing that you do. But every function that you do has an element of coaching. And you don't have to necessarily manage people to be a coach. As we say, insights is a team sport. So whatever the stakeholders function is inside the insight process, they're going to have the ownership of coaching to make sure that process is done, setting their teams up, their colleagues and coworkers up for success. So it's not about just personal development. Coaching comes with every aspect of what we do. It's not just about the art of asking questions. That's one aspect of it, but coaching to soft skills is just one thing that we do. Coaching for better insights involves a lot of other activities, and we'll go through those today. It's not a one-time event. That's usually a training event. Produces this binder that will go up on a shelf unless you have a series of coaching activities to integrate it into ways of working. Tools and technology, most people go to an extreme here, like tools and technology are either going to replace the need for coaching or they're not needed at all. And again, anytime you have an either or, it's usually both and. So everyone learns the same way. So learning and development cannot be ignored in this aspect of insights and processes. And and everybody learns it in their own unique way. So coaching has to take that into consideration. So roles of coaching and better insights. So coaching cannot replace foundational processes, right? You have to have clarity in roles and expectation, clear processes, useful and easy to use tools. We use a lot of different analogies. I think one of Scott's favorite is the house going in the window versus the door and like crossing the road. It doesn't matter. If you have a clear cut goal and you don't, and the tools to get there, if you don't make it easy for them to do, like telling them to go in the house through the window, when the coach is not around, they're going to default back into going through the door. So you've got to make it useful and easy to use tools in order to do that. And the foundational principles, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through the meta impact model, but at Acceleration Point, we have a very strong point of view on how you disentangle the impact story from the contribution of each stakeholders from the execution plans at an individual level and how that ties into value, purpose, and performance. If you want access to that, the link to that webinar, we go into a lot of detail on that. Send us a link or send us a message and we're happy to send that link to you. But that's the key is you have to have foundational processes in place because no amount of coaching is going to overcome that. The other thing is the coaching should be a stepwise process. and not necessarily going from 0 to 60 in one plan. You want, for example, if you've got a really useless insights process, a good next step is let's just get it to useful before we go to extraordinary. If it's good, let's go to great. If it's great, there's always room for improvement. So stepwise, quick wins, motivational inspiration to your teams to kind of move forward. Steps that the steps of coaching haven't changed really ever. It's like you identify where you want to go, the ideal state, you define the gaps and make a plan and track progress. What the paradigm shift here is really coaching should be geared toward, the coaching plan should be geared towards the goal that you want to achieve, not just this general make somebody, upskill somebody or make them better at being an MSL holistically. It really, the coaching plan should be very specific to the goal you're trying to achieve. And so the key here is that the expectations set the stage for coaching that drives aligned action. And it's not just activity that we're looking at. So if we're going to improve our insights process, improve the quality of the insights coming in, we have to communicate. And also, going back to what you're saying, too many listening priorities, we have to communicate clear expectations on what their role is in the insight process and what we're listening for. And if you have, if everything is a listening priority, then there's nothing prioritized, right? It's paralyzing. So you need to be very mindful of the why. The foundational principles of a listening priority are defining that why we're listening for what we're listening for. And it needs to be specific and it needs to be prioritized over other things. Who we need to learn from, how many and by when. A lot of our clients leave this off. It's really setting expectations on at some point you're going to have enough intel about a specific insight you're collecting to make a decision and move on. And it's not this just continuous process of open-ended organic insights. And that's part of the challenge because that's the way it kind of has been. It really is. Let's get specific on who we're listening from, how many, when will we have enough data to make a decision? Because the what next is usually the key to making that where the big brick wall exists for running into the insights kind of being a broken system is that communication. It's why field teams and other stakeholders feel like they're not getting that 360 feedback of what was done with those insights that were collected. So we got to be very purposeful here. I have a few questions for you. Let's start there. So if knowing this, I heard somebody say already, you got too many listening priorities. So how would you rate your organizations? Let's go 1 to 5, 1 being bad, 5 being great. How would you rate organizations' ability to take their medical plan and convert them to strategic, goal-oriented listening priorities? 4, 4. And I think this is the interesting thing that we heard at the MAPS meetings with them in the workshop is that from a standpoint of the biggest things we can tackle and coach against, the developing the listening priorities, we're kind of in a good state, like a good enough state. Some of them may be below average, and there are ways to overcome that. And so you can reach out and we can talk offline on ways to overcome when your organizations don't have good listening priorities. Really, it comes down to just identifying some key behaviors clinical decision making and key behaviors you're trying to impact. And those are going to be your listening priorities. But in the absence of a medical plan based listening priorities, that's one way to go. But if you want to talk about that offline, feel free to reach out. But I agree. I think there's a lot of our clients, especially I'm seeing, we're in a pretty good place for turning our medical plans into listening priorities. What about who we want to learn from? Same scale, 5 being great, 1 being not great, in terms of who we're listening for, who we want to learn from, let's put it that way. And it being very specific to the listening priority. Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Love the specificity. All right. Yeah. So again, this is what similar to what we heard is that the who, and we kind of know who we need to learn from for the most part, and across a lot of disease states. It's really segmenting them according to the goal and the insight we're trying to collect. Is sometimes where we might falter a little bit, but in terms of who we're going to learn from, that we're doing an okay job. And so what it comes down to is putting some structure to it and really defining those listing priorities and who we want to learn from. And all of that needs to be structured. And this is how you narrow it down to the things that you're trying to impact over time. We all have seen the product life cycle. Everybody has seen some version of a product life cycle. The insights topics that we want to talk about does tend to follow the product life cycle before launch. We need to make sure and understand that our HCPs believe there's a need for your product or a need for treatment of the very specific patient you're looking at. They need to know what good looks like. And if there's a paradigm shift in how to treat with your product coming on, you need to understand, especially if you have to change the way clinical decisions are made in order for your product to be best used and have the best outcome for your patients. There's a lot of insights you need to gather around the uphill battle and the barriers associated with changing clinical decision making. Do they understand how it works? All of those things can be done at pre and peri-launch. But then once the product's on the market, you have a whole lot of access, safety, and efficacy conversations. And even though we will be talking about safety and efficacy as emerging data comes out pre-launch, as it relates to clinical decision making is a post-launch activity. So people can agree with and align to, and even you can track sentiment to emerging data if you need to. But when it comes to acting on it, that's a post-launch activity. Now, the reason why I put the insight journey down below is because we always talk about patient centricity, and it's sort of so generic and this ethereal thing, and we're very patient centric. Really, when it comes to insights, the patient journey is that thread across the entire insight journey, meaning the patient profile is established in your registrational studies and the real world patient, there's a gap there. And so understanding the differences is the role of medical affairs pre-launch to go out and do. And mapping out that real world patient journey and that real world success of the patient. So the insights has a journey as well that mirrors the product life cycle. So the structure is important because this is how you prioritize and narrow down the activities and clinical decisions you're making. Otherwise, everything would be a priority and it'd be paralyzing. So over the next 6 slides, this is where I'm going to take you through the case study that I've developed for you, just to give you a sense of what sort of a good insights process would look like and how we might assess the insights process and come up with a coaching plan. And then I'll give you a tool that you could use for the plan that we create in this hypothetical scenario. So I have a disease state. It's a PSA, psoriatic arthritis. It's a chronic immune-mediated inflammatory. Knowing the details is not as critical as like, this is our disease state, and this is kind of a high-level picture. But your disease state is what defines your standard of care and where you start your patient journey. All right, so in this hypothetical case study, we have a new drug coming to market. So it's pre-launch, 6 months or so before launch or a year before launch. These are not real drugs, but they are modeled after real drugs using AI. Wonderful conversation with ChatGPT. And this current standard of care is this injectable biologic. So here are some details that we should all know whenever we're gathering insights. These are the basic stuff we should know about our product, right? This is 101 stuff. So now we're to operationalizing it. So we have like the crux, the underlying foundation of the building of our medical strategy, which then layers on clinical decision-making, clinical pathways, all of that, the clinical study design, the medical strategy is built around that. But if we think about it, converting it to a scientific narrative, every client we work with has their own sort of name for these belief maps. We call it scientific journey, sentiment analysis, but these are the beliefs underlying key clinical decisions that we're trying to impact. And so if you are tracking these over your insights collection process and pre-launch, launch, post-launch, this is the structure of what a belief map could look like for the different products. Again, pre-launch is all about unmet need, and tracking it with structure is giving it some sort of alignment. A lot of it, we're seeing this happen a lot more and more, and our clients and across the industry is becoming standard practice to do this type of structuring on tracking mindsets that are underlying your key clinical behaviors you care about. And so how you get the quantitative aspect of your insights is how do your HCPs align with what you believe. A full alignment is supposed to mirror what you believe your interpretation of data is saying about the unmet need or clinical outcome or long-term safety. So you have a full alignment, and then you have what a negative alignment could be. And then the field medical typically, but really anybody that's engaging HCPs, when you go out and you engage them through scientific exchange, education, um, type of activities, awareness type of activities that we do regularly, this is an opportunity to assess how they align with what you believe to be an aspirational mindset. And then you track that. But the qualitative aspect of this doesn't go away. It's a critical part of insights process. And that is why they have that belief. It's one, the alignment to your aspirational mindset is the quantitative part. The qualitative part is the why they have that belief or why you selected neutral or positive against any of these mindsets. So that brings us saying you have your operationalized medical plan, you've converted it to a mindset ladder, a scientific journey, and you send your teams out to go collect, specific data against this for 6 months, 3 months, whatever your time, but provide a timeline. Give a number if you can. Like in this case, we'll say 200 rheumatologists we want to hear from over 6 months. That gives a very specific goal to try and achieve. You selected the 200, hopefully based on the fact that this is a representative pool of rheumatologists that can be generalized across the full universe of rheumatologists. And then you cache some data to collect. And this is the quantitative part of the data. So it is nice to be able to say that 50% of rheumatologists are neutral about unmet need. And that gives you room to set metrics. Like we want to see movement from neutral to positive over a specific amount of time. And it's the role of medical affairs to support that KPI as a team to move. Not any one individual is responsible for that movement, but that helps set the goal, right? That's the quantitative part of this. But coming up with the action, the tactic to make that movement is absolutely 100% reliant on the qualitative part, why they are, because otherwise you would be making assumptions on why they're neutral and coming up with a whole bunch of educational things to try and make them move. And it might be because it's just access issues or the way the process is embedded in the clinic. So it's critical to know why so that you can make your investments into resources for the teams to make those movements specific and meaningful. So if it's the qualitative part of the insights process that gives you the room for making decisions, then they need to have high quality. The pretext needs to be high quality. And this is by far, and I know what you're going to, you can put in there how well you think your teams are doing with quality insights. But I read thousands and thousands of insights, even with our clients who are using a very structured process, and we still have a long way to go with the quality of insights that are coming in. So what I did is if we want to double click into why 50% of our HCPs are neutral, a lot of the things that we're seeing in the free text of saying why, the three big recurring themes that we see in our systems is that we don't calibrate it as a team of what good looks like. And we end up seeing just a repetition of the what. So, and this is what we call separating the what from the why. So what they believe is different from why they believe it. And so in the free text, if you selected somebody's neutral, you don't need to then go, right, the HCP is unsure. That's just repeating that they're neutral. So that's one big thing we see is that we take the easy way out and we just repeat it, especially if we get to collect that why. We just want to feel like we can't leave a blank for some reason in our head. So we just rather put in something in there. So they just repeat the what. Another other thing is and I did this when I was in MSL. So I'm saying this without judgment. I've been there and I've done it. It's like anytime we see a free text, we want to take the opportunity to give some call note information. And so if the question is, does the HCT align to what you believe to be the unmet need? And you say in your free text, you select, neutral, you say your free text, the HCP is going to whatever conference. That's not the why, right? And so free text is not just about entering in call notes. Then the last big thing we see when it comes to quality of free text is the lack of actionability. And so that usually is just generic, HCP follows guidelines closely. Okay, well, how does that give you information on why they might be neutral on whether there's an unmet need or HCP feels current treatments are adequate? Again, not specific enough. And that's the opportunity to have a group, exercise to get better at asking those questions to get to the why. And that's what we're going to be focusing on. And the remainder of this first part is let's take a look. Okay, so I've presented a case to you. I've shown you what good could look like in terms of structured collection of insights quantitatively. I've shown you what some of the challenges are with the qualitative free text aspect, because it's very critical to making insights actionable. So this is what a coaching plan could look like. If you have this type of insights process, you go in and, okay, is the why clearly communicated? And overall, generally, it's not no major gaps there. So you're pretty good. And the who and how many, let's say we're doing okay. There is some inconsistencies, but we can do that at a one-on-one coach to that on a one-on-one level. The most common need for coaching and insights is that quality of that insight, that free text insight. That's what drives the what next. And so a coaching plan is to improve skills around getting deeper insights. And there are a lot of tools out there, but there are two aspects of it. Deploying these tools to improve and upskill your teams and collecting higher quality insights, but also then it's a continuous coaching plan, and you're also constantly checking to see how they're doing. So checking the quality, making sure the quality of those insights are improving. So if this is our plan, let's talk about what an example of an upskilling can do. This is our most requested, most common workshop that we, for upskilling, for insights collection that we do at Acceleration Point. I'm going to give you a high level overview of what this skill is, given that this is, we don't have an hour presentation. I'm going to go through and show you how you deploy it to your teams. But we have an upcoming webinar that Scott and another medical affairs professional is going to be giving and going into detail on this and what this looks like. So make sure to ping us, or there's going to be a QR code at the end if you want to see when and when that is. But so I'm going to give you a high level overview of what this tool looks like. And then you can do a deep dive in the next upcoming webinar. But we want to empower our teams with practice-changing conversations. I mean, obviously, we're trying to change a practice, or we wouldn't be there, because we rarely go out and talk to an HCP saying, "Attaboy, keep doing what you're doing." We want to have the conversation that drive, inform them, and provide them information to make decisions when the patient is in front of them. So that's practice-changing conversation. And we need to, one of the reasons why, like whenever we do this webinar, the most common reasons of why people say they miss that sort of deeper why is they're moving too quickly in the end, making too many assumptions, not asking the right questions. And that's what this exercise is going to address, not understanding what to ask. So that's the listening priorities, not understanding why you're asking it. Again, listening priorities, not preparing for the meetings. Especially, this is a habit we fall into, especially when we've been doing it a long time. We think it's like we can go have a meeting off the cuffs. And we can, but at the same time, if we're collecting data to make strategic decisions, we need to be purposeful for every meeting, not characterizing the needs of the HCP, not developing that relationship, and again, like the time. Let's be purposeful of, and when we're coaching, let's make sure we're addressing these issues that are arising on why our team are not having quality insights, pretext. So I'm going to go through whenever you deploy an exercise with your team to upskill them. It's always good to have a framework. This is a framework called the 4 powerful questions, because you could just like have a meeting and show insights, real insights coming from your system, and just talk about it as a team. But when you have structured approach to the way you evaluate the questions, that allows you to come up with very specific questions that you can really then double click into the understanding why the HCP believes what they believe. And so I do encourage you to take real insights from your system and actively assess them against a framework like this. Meaning, when when you've got an insight, if you understand what you were told from the HCP and go deeper, broader, then you ask those questions to go deeper or broader. Clarification questions. When you don't fully understand what you were told, so you can't really picture it, before you make any assumptions or move on or move past it, clarify. There's nothing wrong with slowing the conversation down and getting clarification to make sure you're aligned with what they're saying. And I had to work on this a lot, by the way, because I move quickly in conversation, and I oftentimes, to this day, I still have to be very purposeful in making sure I'm aligned with whoever I'm talking to and what they said and what they mean and what I heard. Implication. There are those key words that always pop up that when they're said, like reasonable, logical. Usually, when you hear those things, that means they're saying that something else is not reasonable or not logical. Those are implication questions. And then discrepancy. When you hear two things that just both can't really be true, you want to double click and find out. So this is a good way to kind of go through your insights and really evaluate them, and even as a team, come up with a list of these different types of questions. So what that looks like, and we have this as a template in that we can provide to you. And after the next webinar, you can get in, a lot more practice with it. But we highly recommend you pulling out real insights, assigning them to the type of questions you would ask. Like in this one, I am open to prescribing either inflammatory or immune axis, depending on my patient's preferences. Well, we kind of understand what that means. And so we just need to go a little bit deeper into this. So tell me more about what your patient preferences are. And if anybody wants to like throw out any questions along the way as you go through, I would love that. Let's hear it. The types of questions you can ask. Obviously, we want to not ask yes and no questions. We want to ask open-ended questions. You can even ask why. But we all know that why is a tricky way to start a question because it has a lot of accusational tone to it. So you have to be very careful for using why. But the why is really what you're trying to understand. But tell me more how to what would be talking too fast. Okay. The next one is clarification. So we hear the physician might say the more complicated mechanism of action of the drug makes it challenging to choose the right patient. Well, we kind of understand elements of it, but together, I can't quite picture what they mean. So you just double click. How is MOA currently impacting your clinical decision making? Any other questions you come up with? But the key here is to get the team together to come up with, from this very specific insight, the types of questions you could follow up with. And you can even have a library of these questions that you develop over time to use, because these are perfect questions to ask in follow-up emails preparing an agenda for the next meeting. If you're really advanced and you're doing space active recall, which if you want to know what that is, ask us. And there's a means of using these questions over a period of time to get people recalling information. And that's how we get it to stickiness in their brains so that they can use that information when the patient's in front of them. So these questions can serve a lot of purposes. The implication question, again, it's a lot of those words that imply things like reasonable. Choosing the drug that has years of RWE is reasonable alternative than choosing an unknown drug. And so you just kind of double click into what most influences your decision to try an alternative drug. Just kind of asking those questions to pull that out because they're implying that something is unreasonable. So you want to double click into that. And discrepancy questions. This is when people say something that both can't be true. Like, I believe this product is superior, but I need direct comparison data to make a switch. And so you need to kind of double click into this. What makes this product superior for your patients? And there are a whole bunch of other questions you could ask to really understand this. And the reason why it takes practice is because you want to overcome your sort of reactionary response, or that doesn't make sense, or your tone is critical in asking these questions, and so it takes practice to overcome that. So that is one exercise that you can use as a coaching tool to really get your teams thinking differently in how they ask questions and slowing the conversation down and double clicking into really understanding that why. And progress looks like starting with the group and the team. Start practicing this as a team, and you regulate. If you have monthly meetings, biweekly meetings, one insight as a team, calibrate together, and come up with a list of questions you could ask to get a better, deeper insight, higher quality insight in the next engagements. And that exercise as a team will then help you move at an individual level closer to being able to do that as you come out of every meeting, reflecting on, did I really get the why? Is there any follow-up questions I could use? Bring that to the team for group later, or you have some questions you could reference, and that can go in your follow-up email. But once you start reflecting at like that, thinking like that, at an individual level, eventually you'll make it a habit, and then you'll real time being able to really slow the conversation down and ask those kind of powerful questions. Makes sense. Again, we have a follow-up uh, webinar, yeah, and you're going to be able to go into this exercise in a lot more detail if you want to bring your teams. That would be fun to bring your teams to this type of webinar to really practice it real time. You could even come up with some questions as you go. So I highly recommend the webinar. The next step, the key to this is really making sure you assess the quality along the way. Any good coaching plan is always looking back to make sure people are making progress. And so you can, your analysis and insights is a continual process. Observation of people's skills is part of coaching. Percent of engagement, like then you can build some metrics around it. Are they really focusing on their in focus per listening priority? Just there are a whole host of quality checks you can make all the way through independent review of how the HCPs are learning or providing insights to you through third party feedback, NPS scores, or surveys. Does anybody have any other thoughts on how you could assess quality of insights? Want to share with me? All right. But think about that. That needs to be part of your coaching plan. And so you do want to follow up. And then when you do see significant shifts in the quality of the insights, the skills, practice as a team is a great. Yep, I agree. When you see these improvements in the overall quality, celebrate as a team. Celebrate at the individual level. Recognize people for putting in the effort of improving the quality of insights. This is really important for inspiration of the of sort of continuing, like, it's so easy to walk away from these types of trainings or exercises, and then put that binder on the shelf and go about the way you're doing it. It takes a collaborative team effort to really embed it in a way working, and so that it gets down and becomes a habit at individual level. Yes, yes, I love that. Medical directors participation. Absolutely. All right. So now we're going to wrap up the conversation in the last few minutes with just fun conversation around how you can use some of the new technology to aid in coaching against insights. We all know that Chat GPT and Copilot and all those large language model programs out there can enhance, productivity. There's a whole bunch of tailored productivity hacks everywhere. I mean, you really don't have to put much effort into finding how you can enhance your productivity. But when it comes to insights, with some of the productivity enhancements you can do or try is really coming up and making sure that you and take the insights, the questions, the things you're learning, and embedding those into those emails. All of emails you're having ChatGPT write for you, make sure they include insight questions or even assessing, taking the insights that you are writing in your free text. In Quello, we've actually embedded our AI tool, which we call Elsie. A picture of her is on the far right over there on your screen. We have, in our Quello platform, we have embedded AI into assessing the quality of the insight and providing feedback. We've got compliance checks and making sure that you're entering the right information into the right text as part of the AI assessment of the insights. But we also have a conversation, like, you can summarize more succinctly or ask different questions. Did you mean this? Or should you ask this? There is ways of really embedding it into your ways of working, even at the platform level. Some of the fun that we learned at MAPS that are coming down the pike is there are some digital HCPs that you can do role playing with that are coming out. A couple of different companies are creating this sort of digital HCP that you can practice your role play. And that's one way of training for a safe environment for asking questions and getting some real time feedback with your conversation style, your question answering. And then always there's advanced analytics around your the insight that your clients can track. A lot of the top reasons why that you definitely need your AI tools for that, so you don't have to manually read anymore. Matter of fact, we should be past the manual reading of insights. It is time for us to not read the insights manually on a regular basis. We do want to do it for quality checks and pulling out some great examples to use as part of the training. But to prepare those quarterly or annually reports to show how we're doing in our strategic goals, you shouldn't be reading those insights anymore. Those days should be gone. I would love to hear how you guys are using AI in insights process or coaching the insights. Any ideas? Because we had a lot of great things coming out of the workshops at MAPS.
Courtney has her hand up.
Not using AI for insights yet. I hope you get AI soon. It's really, it changes your world. I promise you that. I'm not using purpose so far. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun things are coming down the pipe. It really is going to change the ways of working so that you can really, when you improve productivity and ways of working and have these tools that give you a safe environment for role playing. It's not this awkward thing that you do at a team meeting that people always kind of make it fluff and not useful because we don't want to injure people's feelings. These tools that are coming down are a way to kind of embed those in ways of working. So it's happening fast. Stay abreast of the technology in this realm because we have clients that are way far ahead and are already starting to use some of these tools. And we have clients like some of you posted it here. We're not there yet. And there are ways of working with your IT team on the guardrails for use of AI. And they should be able to help you out with that. I don't know if Scott is way in there. All right. What other questions do you have? Because we are, let me go back. Wrapping it up, we are in the Q&A. So is there something you would like to know more about?
While we're waiting for the chats to come in, one of the things about coaching for insights that I have been seeing for managers specifically, Kim, I see your question here. Um, you know, I think that one of the things that people do with coaching is they make it too complicated, right? They'll try to do a big, what do you guys think we could do better? What do you think right? And it becomes this big conversation. And the insights coaching that I find works best only takes like 5 minutes. And it's a slight shift where when you put the question up, you just put an insight up on the screen and say, hey guys, I don't want anybody to evaluate this. I don't want anybody to judge it. Don't tell me if it's good. Don't tell me if it's bad. Don't tell me if it's insightful. Just think of one more question that you could have asked to go from where it is to more insightful. It could be from good to great, bad to good, unuseful to useful, where it doesn't matter. You're one question away from having an insight that is more powerful than the one that you collected. So what is that? And what I find is that when you start doing that every week during your MSL call for just a minute or two, what happens is at first people go, oh yeah, that would have been a good question. And then 3, 4, 5 weeks in, all of a sudden you have somebody go, oh, that one's mine. This is the question I should have asked. And they thought about it, but it was too late. They had already submitted it. And then eventually you just start seeing the insights get better because they're actually, thinking of the question in advance and answering it. So I hope that's helpful. It's been just a really great progression to be able to see people. Courtney, we'd be happy to get you slides. And Raquel, yes, we are recording this and we will get it posted for you.
And then this is the net webinar that goes deeper into the 4 powerful questions exercise that we just reviewed at a very high level. It's coming up June 24th, and the QR code to the link there. It really is a great tool. We are seeing our clients really take to it and use it. We got a very good response at the maps. We had fun exercise of coming up with questions for the case study. And it's so easy to kind of think about how you can embed that into your everyday ways of working. So we really appreciate your attendance today. We thank you for joining, your participation, your questions, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.